Let's talk about first responders. First responders and the Blue Angels that are going to fly in respect and honor for the first responders. Right, Donald Trump? Now, let's go back to the 1980s, Donald Trump, when you were all cuddled up to Ghabbanifar and Khashoggi and the triad development scammers from Manhattan there with the Bud McFarlane and Poindexter and Casey and, Reagan Bush and Oliver North. The first responders, Donald Trump, and they're the greatest people in the world. Well, let's talk about first responders and how infectious sewage waste and deadly industrial toxins and oil field chemicals were exposed by me during the 80s and the 90s. Now, you want to talk about a first responder. Let's talk about the oil sludge, the sludge pits all over America's oil fields. Donald Trump, the sludge pits that sit on top of the great Gulf Coast aquifer. And let's talk about all the sewage that's dumped that carries tens of thousands of viruses. Let's talk about all the sewage that's spreading COVID-19, Donald Trump. Let's talk about the massive sewage debacle of the government and the real estate development community with the bankster gangsters and their insurance companies all making billions from it, where they dump sewage all over America, like in Lake Champlain and like in the St. Lawrence River and in Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And the Bay of Fundy gets more sewage full of viruses. And now what you're noticing, Donald Trump, talk about first responders, is all these discarded face masks and all these discarded rubber gloves. Well, they're winding up on the garbage barges and they're being dumped into New York Harbor and they're floating all over the place. The world's oceans are being contaminated with infectious rubber gloves and masks and all kinds of wound dressings and surgical gauze and things like that, Donald Trump. In other words, Donald Trump, you want to inject people with disinfectant and subject them to bursts of bright light and Jesus, God Almighty, you want to make them breathe disinfectants, right, Donald Trump? Let's talk about the sewage, Don Trump. Come on, Mike Pence. Let's talk about how New York State and Andy Cuomo is responsible for more sewage being dumped in the environment than you can possibly imagine, full of tens of thousands of viruses. So, Donald Trump, we're going to talk about first responders. Let's look at the oil field sludge pits that yours truly exposed all across America and around the world. Let's take a look at the Citizens Clearinghouse for Hazardous Waste, CCHW, the people that exposed Love Canal. I've been working with those people since the 1970s. Amazing story, isn't it, Donald Trump? And then, of course, we can finish this hazardous waste viruses video out with your relationships to Ghabbanifar and Khashoggi. When you and Oliver North and Poindexter and Casey and, the Clintons, the Clintons were involved in this up the gazoo, with Oliver North and the whole gang there at the Houstonian Estates, Donald Trump. You see, Donald Trump, I built skyscrapers too. I built lots of skyscrapers, Donald Trump, and I worked at Johnson Space Center. Isn't that amazing, Donald Trump? And I'm actually educated, Donald Trump. And what you got to understand, Donald Trump, is first responders. Let's take a look at the gangster banksters and their relationships to these real estate developers and these people that dump sewage all over the place. In other words, Don Trump, the bankers and the sewage dumpers and the insurance companies and the real estate speculators, your biggest campaign contributors, by the way, are deeply involved in spreading viruses all over America and around the world. COVID-19 is just one of the viruses, Donald Trump. And yes, this is a public health war. And what needs to be stopped, Andy Cuomo, is what's going on at Lake George, New York. All those uber wealthy upstate mafia families that let their septic tanks leach and leak into Lake George so they can flush them down the Lachute River into Lake Champlain. And again, ladies and gentlemen, the Blue Angels will be flying across America in honor of first responders. Put this one in your Rolodex and keep it in your family scrapbook, because bottom line is trillions in helicopter money really have gone up in smoke. Hasta la vista, God bless, and as always, we will be back.